Hi guys, it's Debbie with Debbie J's Crafting Corner, and today I'm going to be playing with the Clear Stampin' Die of the Month from Spellbinders for January 2023. This is the Hydrangea Bouquet, and it has that lovely flower bouquet and some pretty sentiments, and an extra, just a little small swag over here of some additional flowers. It also has all of the dies that go with it. We've got the die for the... Let me go ahead and bring that out. We've got the die for the large and small flower clusters, and we have one for one of the sentiments, and the one for the sentiment is the one for hello friend. So there are a couple of other sentiments: you brighten my day and thinking of you. And I've already made one card with this. I was kind of just messing around yesterday before my live stream and decided to do a little bit of, I don't know, some playing with some old embossing powder that I hadn't used in like forever, and I'm almost out of and don't even know what brand it is, and did a little bit of watercolor painting with some pretty little mica watercolors that I got from Amanda at Pear Blossom Press. She had sent those to me as a gift. I have no idea what brand they are or where she got them, but I have sent her a note asking her because they are just so darn pretty, but you only get the 4 colors, so I'm thinking I need something more. Anyhow, I thought I'd make another card very similar to this one, maybe using a different embossing powder, because the one I used, yeah, I think it just is, it's kind of old, and it's not, I don't think it was a detail. It does do a really pretty finish, so I like the finish, but I want to get more of those detailed lines, if at all possible, from this stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and just start off with my Misti and with that bouquet, because it is just so pretty. And I'm using I decided to try out a different sticky grid for my Misti here. I've got a DIY-ish one that is... Let's see, this one is part of a Nakapa mat that I got off of Amazon. So I'm trying out this standard grip mat that is actually from the Dollar Tree to give that one a shot. And so far it works fine. Only thing is the outsides, of course, are not sticky. The only sticky part is the insides. You have to make sure that your card, if you're doing a small piece, you need to make sure it is touching the sticky part. So I've got that butted up into the corner, and I'm going to do the same thing with a piece of black cardstock. And I think I want a little bit more of the hydrangea showing, so I'm going to go basically over here into the corner. Make sure that my paper is where I want it, and then I can close the lid. And I'm going to use some anti-static powder over my entire panel here, because I don't know for sure exactly where I'm going to stamp everything, and I don't want my embossing powder sticking where I don't want it. And I'm going to use that same stamp that says "Hello Friend" down here in the corner. Let me make sure that's still lined up where I want it. I think I'll lower it a little bit more. I should have done this sentiment at the same time that I was picking up my flowers, but I didn't. Now I'm going to use some Embossing Ink and just cover the entire image with that embossing ink. And this is also a great way for you to be able to make and mass produce some cards. When you get a design that you like and you've got your Misti, you can restamp them as many times as you want. Go ahead and rub that down to make sure I get a good impression. And I'd say that that is pretty good, but I am going to do one more. Just one more quick stamping over it. And this time I think I'm going to use my Recollections Gold. Okay, so now I'm going to take my take my stamped image out of my Misti and just pour some of this gold embossing powder over the whole thing. Ooh, that is pretty. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I do have a little bit of powder where I don't want it. So I'm just going to take a dry brush and brush that off. And next I'll hit it with my heat tool. This is a Marvy embossing gun, but I would say whatever embossing gun you have would work perfect for this. And that looks lovely. So I've added a little water to each of the pans here so they can start kind of mixing up and letting me have access to some of that pretty paint. And I'm going to start off with the green for the leaves. Now the green is kind of dark, kind of light, and I think it looks real pretty on here. I may decide to come back in with a little bit of blue and just darken that up a little bit. And since we've got embossed lines, we really don't have to worry that much about whether or not we stay in the lines. And when I do the flowers, I'm probably not going to worry that much about it at all, because you know what? This is just going to be adding a little bit of color in between all of those lines. So if I go over them like I'm doing here, it's just going to sink back down in between the lines of my embossing. And I can wipe off any paint that kind of settles to the top. I don't think I had any that actually did that on my last one. So this is a really, really quick technique, and it turned out so pretty on my sample card. And it wasn't even intended as a sample card. I was just messing around a little bit. Okay, just adding in some of that green into all of my leaves here. And this embossing powder that I use this time does leave a lot more of the space in between the embossed lines, so I can add the color in a little bit better than I did the time before. But this just lets you see, this one has a little bit of a more fine detail in the powder itself. You know, smaller chunks of the embossing powder. So that lets you see that you can get different looks depending on what kind of embossing powder that you're going for. Okay, so I think I'm going to take a little bit of the blue and just drop that in with some of my green. Just to give it a little bit of a different look, right? Because this is kind of a purpley blue. And I'm mixing in with my green on here. I'm just going to let the water do most of the mixing. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the green and mix that back in too. And I think that looks kind of interesting. Okay, so next I'm going to go in with one of the other colors. So I've got a rose gold and a bronze. They're both kind of a reddish orange color. So I'm going to start with my rose gold. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try doing it to a two-tone again on this one. So I'm going to add my rose gold closer to the center of this flower, partially because I can see it better this time around than the last time around, and let it dry just a touch, and then I'll come back in with some of that bronze. Yeah, I'm just playing, guys. There is no rhyme or reason to what I am doing here. I am just playing with these, and I think they are just such pretty colors. And then we've got a few blooms over here, and I just realized there's some more green that I can add too. Going to do the same kind of thing with these guys here. Let that dry. And I think for this bigger flower, I'm going to say that it's probably the same kind as these others. I'm going to start off with some of this kind of here in the middle and around the edges of my flowers here, on those little lines. And I'm using a water brush. This is just making it easier for me to clean the brush. It doesn't really matter what kind of brush that you use. Just a water brush or a watercolor brush would be perfect. And I am just kind of messing around a little bit here, like I said. And I don't even have to fill it in the rest of the way if I don't want. But to clean it, I'm just squeezing some of the water out until it runs clear, and then I can pick up the next color. So let me grab my heat gun real quick and just dry some of that paint. You don't want to go too hot on here because you could possibly melt some of your embossing. You don't want to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in with this bronze color. And add a little bit of that to the rest of those petals. I think this is turning out pretty. Now there's these small little pieces on the end of the stamens. I'm going to go back in with some of the rose gold. Okay, and next I'm going to go back in with the green that I missed. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do for the hydrangea part, in the original one I went over with a couple of different layers of the purple, and you can see it a little bit. It does shine on top of the black, but it is a bit hard to see. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to mix some of one of the lighter colors. I think the rose gold would be pretty with that. But try mixing some in. There we go. We've got a little extra water there. So I'm just scooping some of it out of my palette there. I'm going to go in and grab some of the rose gold. And I'm thinking that that should still keep us a nice pretty purple, but it'll be a little bit brighter, so it's going to show up better on the black. Okay. And I think I'm right on that. It does show up a little bit better on the black, so that is awesome. So I'm going to go basically just over the whole thing. The paint is going to settle in the little wells that's created with the embossing. There we go. And all I need to do now is just let that dry a little bit.
Mic off. Mic on.
And because, of course, I am always impatient, I'm pulling out my Heat It tool. This one does heat pretty well, but it doesn't blow as much, so it shouldn't blow things around. And it's not quite as hot as my regular heat gun, so this should work fine for just drying some of that paint a little faster. Think that that is turning out pretty. One other thing I did like doing was doing that little bit of splatter that I have on that one, and I'm using something else from Pear Blossom Press for this. Amanda, she's such a sweetheart. She sent me this Bling palette that they have in their shop, and I've only used it once, and that was on the other card, so I'm going to give that one a try and try to start using a little bit more often. So for this one, I used the bronze for my splatters. I think I'm going to use some of the rose gold this time. I'm going to pick some of that up and put it on the palette. And we'll see if this actually makes a bigger mess or a lesser mess than what I usually wind up when I'm doing it. Also, it's going to have to go on my first finger for me to be able to actually reach anything. Okay, let's just try doing a little bit of flick. Just think it needs a little bit more water in there. I did get kind of a big drip there, but that's okay. But I have a little bit of drips there. We get a little bit more of the paint. And the reason I dripped so much there is because I put a little bit too much water on there. This is trial and error for me, guys, because I don't normally do a lot of this. But this, I think, is going to add a little bit extra something to my cards. I think that's going to be pretty. Let me clean up the mess. It's not much of a mess. It just wipes right off. And I'm going to blot up some of that piece there. I'm probably going to be trimming that part off anyway, but that's all cleaned up, so it didn't make a humongous mess, so that is good. And then I'll just take out my heat tool again and do a little drying of that paint so I can trim this down and put it on a card. Okay, one thing I do want to do before I put this on my card is I want to put a sentiment on the inside. One thing that I did do when I put it on here on my card is, first off, I had trouble getting everything to stamp down. I had to stamp it several times, and I got my sentiment a little bit crooked. Turned out fine. I think it's still super cute, but I want to go ahead and get the stamping done on the inside of my card before I put that pretty panel on the outside, just in case I need to use a second panel. You know how that goes, right? So we'll go ahead and take off the stamp from the previous one. Grab out a card base. And I'll go ahead and put this on the inside of my card, just lining it up with the corner there. And I kind of like the placement that I did previous time. That looks pretty good. I have it up in the corner with the floral and then my sentiment in the center. So let me grab one of the sentiments. So we've got the one that says, "You brighten my day," and "Thinking of you." I like both of them. I kind of like the "Brighten my day" more to use right now. And let's go ahead and get that centered. I'm also going to use a creative corner. Goes with a Misti to try to get everything lined up. Now that's what I did last time, but I think I may have just had it off a little bit still because, like I said, it turned out a little bit crooked. Okay, so I've got everything butted up against this edge here. So if I raise that up, and I want this over a little bit, and the reason it went crooked is that the bottom of the Y and the G are just a little bit not lined up. So let me just adjust that slightly because I want the "My Day" to be lined up. Okay, we'll go ahead and put that down there. Now I can add my little swag there, put that up in the top. And now I can go ahead and stamp the inside of the card. And this is one of the things that if you're going to do multiples, you can get the placement right on one, and then you can just stamp out a bunch. Okay, so I need to add some more ink. And I just got it a little bit off. See that? So that means that I didn't have my grip mat in the corner. Now that's probably one of the negatives I'm going to say for this, is it doesn't fit snugly. So if you slide it up or down a little bit, it moves around in there is the thing. If you don't have it butted up against the edge, you could have a little bit of stamping that's off. So that means that this one is not going to be the one I'm going to use. I can just turn it over, and then I can put my panel on the outside, and I'll use this as the inside. So I'll go ahead and do that, I think. So put that in place, then add some more ink down onto my stamped. And this one is the Obsidian Black. Usually it stamps great on the first round. I'm not sure what it is that's happening here. Maybe because I usually stamp here, but I'm stamping on the other side of my platform, so maybe it's an issue with the platform. I don't know. Could also be the foam pad underneath. Maybe I'm just not getting enough pressure. Okay, let's give that another shot. I think I want one more right over the My Day. This is almost perfect. And of course it had shifted just a touch, but I think I'm going to salvage it. I think it'll still work. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to go with it. To me, it looks just, because it's got that little bit of a shadow, it almost looks a little bit distressed. So I'm going to go with it and say that that is good enough. But I'm thinking that this is probably not a good solution for inside my Misti. So that is something good for me to know and to share with you guys, is it doesn't fit quite snugly, which means it's easier to move your stamps out of alignment by mistake. So I'm not going to be using that anymore for this. I can use it for other things, like keeping everything steady on my desk, but I'm not going to be using it for that. Okay, so let me go ahead and burnish this back down. And looks like the ink should be pretty much dry there, so that is good. Now I'm going to trim this down. It's had enough time to finish drying. I'll go ahead and trim it down a little bit so that it'll have a little bit of a white border all the way around on my card. And I think I want that 1/8 of an inch, just like I did on the other. So that means I'm going to be cutting about a 1/4 inch off. And I kind of want to keep it, I want to keep most of my flower, but I do want to trim a little bit off on the edge there. So I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch off on this side. This also means that it gives you another chance to make sure that everything is lined up well, that you've got all your corners are square. So this is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. And just double checking this side, make sure it is all good too. That looks great. And then I'm going to put some foam tape on the back. And put that on the front of my card, leaving that little gap there. And that's going to finish up that card. I think these turned out super, super pretty. That's going to finish up this card project using the Hydrangea Bouquet from Spellbinders. I think this turned out super, super pretty. And that was just using a couple of the stamps and some embossing and some pretty watercolors. Use what you have in your stash, right? So you guys have a wonderful day. Be sure to check out this playlist over here to see some more projects where I'm using Spellbinders products. And I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.